At my kid's incredible surprise party, my husband whispers, "We must flee now. Look beneath the cake." The sun beamed down, casting a golden hue over the backyard where laughter and shouts of joy mingled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked cake. Sarah Taylor had meticulously organized this surprise birthday celebration for her twins, Jack and Emma. Bright balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze as children dashed around, their giggles echoing like music to her ears. Proudly, she took in the colorful decorations adorning the garden, feeling each detail reflected her love and dedication as a mother. This day was supposed to be a picture-perfect moment, a slice of the American dream realized. Then, in the midst of jubilant chaos, Mark's urgent whisper cut through the jubilance as he pulled her aside, his face a mask of unease. "We must flee now," he insisted, his voice trembling slightly. "Look beneath the cake." The ground shifted beneath her, and her heart raced, not with excitement, but dread. Beneath the marbled frosting of the cake lay an unimaginable revelation about her father, a man she had idolized since childhood, a respected figure in their community. Beneath all the joy of this day, an unsettling truth lurked in the shadows, threatening to unearth layers of betrayal she had never expected. Whispers circulated around her father, rumors of disgrace clothed in the guise of respectability. What did Mark mean? It couldn't be true. She wrestled with disbelief. The very idea that her father, the man she revered, could be hiding such darkness sent shivers down her spine. Her mind spiraled into chaos, grappling with conflicting emotions. Could she live with the knowledge that her family's legacy was built on a foundation of lies? Her pride intertwined with fear as she recalled teaching her children the significance of honesty and integrity. What kind of mother would she be if she shielded them from the truth? How could she uphold the values she instilled in her classroom while concealing the scandal that could shake them all to the core? As Mark spoke of the scandal unraveling, detailing the whispers of wrongdoing, it felt like an impending storm hovering just out of sight. Each revelation landed heavily in her mind. She wanted to scream, to push aside the uncomfortable turbulence stirring within her, but she could not. Her father's proud image, the myth she clung to like a lifeline, began to fracture before her eyes. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen.
Now let's continue. A sudden pang of anguish gripped her chest as she envisioned telling Jack and Emma the truth. Would they look at her as she now looked at her father? The phrase, "we must flee," echoed relentlessly in her mind. Flee from what? The very life she worked to build? She felt trapped between loyalty and honesty, suffocated by the weight of legacy. It felt like a noose tightening around her, squeezing away her breath. As laughter erupted around them, each joyful cheer felt like a taunt, a reminder of the normalcy she desperately wished to preserve. The cake, her creation, meant to symbolize celebration and hope, might be the vessel of devastation instead. Sarah's thoughts raced, her heart pounding in her ears as she stood on the precipice of a choice that could unravel everything. Facing Mark, she found steely resolve battling with a desperate longing for the simpleness of ignorance. The clock ticked on, and she grappled with the question that hung heavily in the air. Could she find the courage to confront the truth without letting it shatter her family's happiness? Would she risk the facade her father meticulously maintained, or protect her children from a darkness she never wished to expose? The weight of her father's secrets smothered her, leaving her suspended in a state of impending revelation, torn between the bittersweet joy of the moment and the haunting gravity of what lay ahead. The chaos of the party continued to swirl around her, but Sarah was trapped in her own tumultuous thoughts. The vibrant colors of the decorations, once symbols of joy and celebration, now felt oppressive. She stole a glance toward the table where the cake stood magnificently, its beauty now a bitter reminder of the impending deception. "What are you thinking?" Mark's voice pierced through the haze of her thoughts, a blend of concern and urgency. She could see the tension etched in his expression. Mark had always been her anchor, the sensible one, but even he was unsure how to navigate this storm. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It can't be true about my father, can it?" Mark's brow furrowed, concern deepening. We need to find out more. There's more at stake here than just family pride. Your children deserve honesty, and you deserve to know the truth. Could she face that truth? Could she unearth the information that might taint her childhood memories? These questions loomed large as she glanced at Emma, who was laughing with her cousins, blissfully unaware. It would break her heart to see the disillusionment in Jack and Emma's eyes, the same disillusionment that now threatened her own. As the day went on, pieces of her world began to crumble. The neighbors offering compliments about the party, the laughter of the children, all seemed to blend into a cacophony that made the ground beneath her feet feel increasingly unstable. Each sip of soda felt like swallowing shards of glass.
Sarah had always prided herself on being an honest and upright person, but now, with the shadow of her father's alleged misdeeds looming large, it felt as if her own values were under siege. "Sarah," Mark said again, more forcefully this time, pulling her from her spiral, "you know we can't ignore this. Whatever is under that cake could change everything. Are you ready to find out?" The firmness in his voice ignited a flicker of determination within her. Perhaps it was time to take control. She needed to stop waiting for life to happen to her, blinded by naivete. She needed to confront the truth, whatever it might be. As she took a steadying breath, she felt the anxiety beginning to morph into resolve. "Let's look," she finally said, her voice steady and low. The decision felt monumental, more than a simple choice between ignoring rumors or diving into the abyss of family secrets. It was about unearthing her own identity, about defining who she was in light of the truth she might face. Mark nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly as he offered his hand. Together, they approached the table, the cake still standing proud amidst the festivity, but now it felt like a ticking clock, counting down to their confrontation with reality. "On the count of 3, he said, taking a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. As they lifted the cake, a dark envelope lay beneath it, its presence like an omen of things to come. Sarah's heart raced as she reached for it, a mixture of dread and anticipation swelling within her. Would this envelope reveal the truth she feared but ultimately needed? Just as she grasped its edges, the laughter around them faded. The hum of the party seemed to diminish, leaving only the thudding of her heart and the breathless whispers of uncertainty that swirled in her mind. In an instant, everything changed, and Sarah realized this was not just about facing her father's past, it was about claiming her future. The moment of truth was on the horizon, and she was about to step into a new chapter of her life, one she could not yet comprehend. As she tore open the envelope, the weight of the decision solidifying in her gut, the words that awaited her would define her next step. What revelations awaited her beyond the threshold of this moment? The crisp edges of the envelope felt foreign in her hands, heavy with the potential to reshape her understanding of reality. As Sarah peeled it open, her breath caught in her throat, the air around her thickening with apprehension. She half expected the words to be scorched onto the page, incriminating towards her father, and violently ripping through the fabric of her childhood. "What does it say?" Mark asked, his voice just above a whisper, brimming with tension. She met his eyes, searching for an anchoring reassurance. Instead, she found an equal share of fear, mirrored in his gaze. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the parchment free and scanned the text tremblingly.
Initial lines seem like a terrible poem, filled with accusations and recounting of affairs that cast shadows over her father's name. With each word, layers of her trust peeled back, revealing the stark reality that perhaps the father she admired had lived a dual life, one that was in stark contrast to the man who had set her on a pedestal for a lifetime. It's true, she finally managed, her voice quivering like a thread on the verge of snapping. It's all here, details I never wanted to know. An unsettling calm wrapped around her as the impact of the revelation began to settle in. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder, gripping it tightly, as if he could resonate with her internal dismantling. It felt surreal, entrapping her within a fragile bubble of disbelief and a gnawing craving for clarity. She turned the envelope in her hands, seeking to glean anything else it might offer, a reminder, a warning, or perhaps insight into her father's motives. What drove a man to betray his family, to weave a tapestry of lies? The questions multiplied, dizzying her mind. But in their wake came the stark realization she was no longer a passive recipient of her family's history. She was entwined in its chaotic narrative. As the vainglorious celebration continued around them, the once comforting sounds of joy transitioned into hollow echoes, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in her mind. Every jubilant laugh now felt like an accusation, hammering into her consciousness. She wanted to shout for silence, to make everyone recognize the storm brewing beneath their feet. Yet, pushing through a profound sense of loss, clarity emerged unexpectedly. She recalled the lesson her father had taught her, the importance of honesty, the inherent value in confronting hard truths. That memory flickered like a beacon in her new reality. She needed to establish her own compass moving forward. "We need to talk to my mother," Sarah declared, the weight of her newfound conviction infusing steadiness into her words. "If I'm going to face this, I must hear her side. I deserve to know why he did this and how it affects us." Mark nodded, his jaw set in agreement. "I'll be right here with you." As they moved away from the festivities, the adrenaline coursed through her, carrying bouts of anger and fear in its wake. Each step felt weighted but intentional, pushing her toward liberation, toward confronting the specter of her father's failings head-on. Sarah felt empowered, not just by the urgency to unearth the truth, but by the need to redefine herself in the aftermath. She wanted to be the mother who could guide Emma and Jack through their own dark moments, teaching them resilience and strength. Arriving at her parents' home, she hesitated at the door. Heart racing, uncertainty bubbling within her, she realized this was not just about seeking answers. It was about forming her identity and protecting her children's perception of the world.
Criticar seu pai felt like tearing at a fabric that had stitched her life together, but she also recognized that a fresh stitch was needed, one sewn with openness and honesty. Her mother looked up, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't want you to get hurt. I thought keeping the truth from you was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" Sarah shot back, her voice rising with a mix of anger and bewilderment. "Living in a lie? I need to know who I am, and to do that, I need to know who he really is." Mark rested a hand on Sarah's back, sensing her boiling frustration. It wasn't just disbelief, it was a turning point. She was reclaiming ownership of her narrative. "Mom, you can't keep trying to shield me," Sarah continued, her voice softer yet unyielding. "I have to confront this, for me, for my children." There was an ironic clarity dawning upon Sarah as the shadows of doubt began to lighten. Each truth revealed wasn't meant merely to expose her father's deceit. This was about carving out her space in the world that wasn't dictated by the legacy of silence. "I need you to be honest with me. What really happened?" Sarah pressed, her body poised for answers that might slice through years of repression. With a deep breath, her mother nodded slowly, the weight of her secrets trembling on her lips as she began to recount the stories guarded for too long, the symptoms of a family unraveling, the betrayals nested within their walls. But as each revelation spilled forth, Sarah realized that the deeper she delved into the tangled web, the more she could feel the scales of her own identity tipping. What new parts of herself would emerge from the ashes of her father's duplicity? As the truths unfurled, Sarah sensed another shadow looming, a fear not just her father's misdeeds, but of what she might find in herself. Would her own flaws mirror his, or would she discover a strength that had remained hidden, waiting for this precise moment of reckoning? And as each answer ignited the sparks of her internal journey of discovery, an unsettling thought flickered on the horizon. What if the struggle for honesty would challenge everything she thought she knew, not just about her father, but about herself? With that thought anchored firmly in her mind, she felt an unrelenting urgency to push forward, a readiness to confront the specter of her family's truth, no matter how shattering. Would she have the courage to face it, or would the shadows of the past drag her down into their depths? The kitchen felt like a crucible, the air heating with every word exchanged, evolving into a raw exploration of the family's hidden dynamics. Sarah's mother finally unveiled her truths, but each revelation felt like a double-edged sword. For every tightly wrapped story of her father's betrayal surfaced, a new layer of doubt unraveled within Sarah about her own identity, a skin shedding, yet dangerously vulnerable.
"I thought he was just going through a phase," her mother murmured, a quaver in her voice denoting the battle between regret and hope. "I didn't want to see the monster behind the man I loved." Sarah's chest tightened. The narrative her mother painted was one of naivete, tied with a desperate yearning for normalcy. Was she a reflection of that same desire? The mirror of her father's failings felt ominous. Finding herself at the precipice of growth, she harbored a troubling realization. What if she mirrored her father's flaws, swallowed by ambitions that trampled on her principles? "Mom, why did you stay?" The question erupted from her lips before she could second-guess herself. "I thought it was best for you," her mother replied, an echo of weariness threading through her tone. "But now I see it was about my own fears and my own choices." Her mother's candidness cut deeper than any confession could. She articulated a truth Sarah feared to confront, that her own choices could be influenced by the shadows looming over her upbringing. Each passing moment locked her in introspection. Would she dare to live authentically, even if it meant facing the unsettling side of her ancestry? Beads of perspiration began to form on her brow as the burden of understanding felt pressing. Who were you before all of this? The past consumes you, but I want to reclaim my narrative. How can I do that with these shadows trailing me? "I didn't have the courage to face it," her mother admitted, the sorrow spilling into her voice. "I thought silence could protect us, but look where it got us." A cascade of realizations swept over Sarah. She was not merely a victim, nor an observer. Somewhere within her lay the seeds of resilience, capable of drawing strength from adversity. But it was not enough to acknowledge that strength without action. Change demanded participation. "Where do we move forward from here?" she pressed, glancing at Mark, who remained her steadfast anchor, encouraging her silent yet palpable journey. Her mother hesitated, as though grappling with the weight of her next words. "We begin by speaking the truth, together. It will take time, but we owe that to ourselves." Yet uncertainty gnawed at Sarah. Could she maintain her commitment to truth while dismantling the legacy of deception? Would her resolve hold firm amid the backlash from family and friends who had embraced the illusions? This was not just a journey of healing, it was a test of character. The implications stretched far beyond her father's choices. Sarah could not rebuild what had been broken without confronting her fears of inadequacy and shame. "I need to create something new," she voiced, a steadying breath emphasizing her intent. No more hiding. She felt a pulse of determination surging through her, igniting something dormant within. Was this the empowerment that resilience promised?
The realization signaled a shift within her, a turn toward the possibility of drafting a new narrative, distinct from her lineage, but heavily influenced by its teachings. "I want to share this," Sarah stated, her voice unwavering, "with others like us. It's time to reclaim our stories." "What do you mean?" her mother asked, eyes widening in sudden realization. "I want to help other people navigate through their pain, to find strength in transparency. It's not enough to just heal ourselves. We need to pull others out of this quagmire. You showed me that," she said, leaning into her mother's newfound resolve, coiling the bond of shared experience. Just then, however, the moment shifted alarmingly. A small, faint sound echoed from the living room, an unsettling thump, like the disquieting echo of shadows punctuating their conversation. Instinctively, Sarah's heart raced. There was something significant in that sound, a signal of trouble yet to be uncovered. What had evaded her in this emotional storm? The foundations of their house were shaky. What lay beneath the surface that could disrupt everything they had just begun to piece together? As that thought sunk in, the gravity of her family's truth expanded, contrasting sharply with her yearning for freedom. Would she have the capacity to tackle this renewed tumult, or was she merely skimming the indelible surface of her family's dysfunction? With a tightened grip on the edge of the table, Sarah steeled herself for the next step, bracing for whatever lay ahead. The shadows loomed once more, darker and more complex than before. The room remained tense, a fragile thread binding them in expectation. Sarah rose from her seat instinctively, the thump's resonance rippling through her, manifesting in anxious energy. What could it be? A shift in the unknown that felt alarmingly like a metaphor for the turbulence they faced. Her gaze drifted to Mark, an anchor in her storm. He shared her apprehension, his own eyes reflecting the urgency of the moment. "Stay here," she whispered, buckling under the weight of fear that threatened to bounce back into old patterns. Yet a louder voice within urged her to confront whatever lurked beyond the kitchen threshold. This was about reclaiming her narrative, after all. With tentative steps, she crossed the kitchen floor, each creak of the floorboard beneath her echoing like a heartbeat. As she approached the doorway to the living room, urgency mounted. The thump had been sporadic, almost rhythmic, an unspooling clock of unwelcome surprises in the context of their recent conversations. "Are you sure?" Mark's voice was a low murmur behind her, a tempest of concern intertwined with respect for her choice. "I have to," she affirmed, her voice a mixture of dread and determination. It was time to face not just the surface fears shaped by her father's legacy, but any undercurrents of distress swirling in her family's foundation.
Peering into the living room, a scene unfolded that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't a singular threat, but an avalanche of suspicion. The documents scattered across the coffee table were familiar, yet frightening. Old letters, receipts, photographs, pieces of her mother's history mixed with those of her father's shortcomings. Each item felt like a ghost revealing itself from a carefully curated past. Mark stepped gingerly beside her, and they shared a quiet moment of understanding, a silent pact to navigate this moment together. "We should go through them," he suggested, his tone low, harboring both caution and support. These could hold answers. Answers. The words struck a chord, reconciling Sarah's fear with a growing pulse of bravery. What if these forgotten remnants mapped out the journey of her ancestry, illuminating paths she had yet to challenge? Settling on the couch before the clutter, Sarah felt the hairs on her neck stand up. She reached for the first letter, trembling as the yellowed paper met her fingertips. Unfolding it cautiously, she recognized her mother's handwriting. The familiar, looping script held sentiments she had buried, moments of vulnerability overshadowed by years of silence. "I can't stay silent any longer," her mother had penned, revealing an inner struggle that mirrored Sarah's own. The contents dripped with sorrow and laments that once locked her mother's authenticity under layers of expectation. As she continued reading, the realization blossomed within Sarah. Each word was a fragment of a tale that required re-examination, a narrative that was begging to be retold. "Do you want to look at these together?" Mark asked, heartache reflected in his eyes. It was a careful invitation, one that offered connection over chaos. "Yeah, I do," she breathed, embracing the shadows they had both been dabbling in. Each document she unraveled became a piece of her own identity, a contradiction to the flaws she feared. The more she discovered about her mother's hidden truths, the more clarity emerged around her own desire to help others. "Sarah?" Her mother's voice interrupted the moment. She stood in the doorway, weary yet resolute. "You don't have to navigate this alone. I'm here to unpack it with you." An unexpected surge of hope flooded through Sarah. Perhaps they were entering a new chapter not defined by lineage, but reshaped by choice. As they dived deeper into the narrative laid out before them, it became increasingly evident that clarity came with its own set of burdens. With every new insight, Sarah faced the burgeoning complexity of their shared histories and the seismic shifts they prompted in her own resolve. Yet beneath the weight of revelations rested an unsettling thought. Were they truly ready to confront the repercussions of unearthing these long-buried secrets? The fear of unmooring everything they had worked for, the tension of revealing family truths, loomed like a shadow refusing to recede.
Let's start with the first letter and see where it leads us. As they opened the correspondence together, the letters transformed from ancient remnants of disappointment into catalysts for potential healing.
Each line spoke of desires unexpressed, of dreams curtained by fear. Sarah's heart raced with the weight of revelations unfolding. She was no longer merely reading. She was actively reclaiming words that had been set adrift, words that could dramatically shift the trajectory of their lives. "Mom, these thoughts reflect your truth. You can't hide from them, and neither can we," Sarah urged, recognizing the courage simmering in the depths of her mother's eyes. The moment felt fragile, yet charged with an electric possibility. Mark, observing quietly, sensed the import of this moment. It's interconnected. Your journey stems from your mother's choices, but it can forge its own path forward. He glanced pointedly in Sarah's direction. It was a reminder that her evolution was also about embracing legacy intertwined with agency. Each letter they explored brought up unexamined feelings: anger, forgiveness, self-discovery. Sarah was unraveling layers of their shared experience, while simultaneously building her own narrative. Memories, once locked in sorrow, surged to the surface, initiating dialogues previously deemed inappropriate. "Why didn't you make a different choice?" Sarah pressed, vulnerability creeping in. The tone of her inquiry spiraled into deeper territories beyond blame, into understanding. "Because I thought silence was the only way to protect you," her mother murmured, tears glimmering in her eyes. "It felt safer, but it didn't serve any of us." The sorrowful acknowledgement bore heavily on them, tempered by the knowledge that to step forward, it required action, an understanding that healing would demand not just confrontation, but also commitment to openness. Could they, as a unit, bear the weight of that revelation together? In that moment, Sarah realized they were on the precipice of reshaping their family's narrative. It wouldn't be a clean escape from the past, nor a straight path to absolution. It would be a tumultuous, winding journey, yet she felt an insatiable need to explore every inch of this new ground they were breaking. Pinching the edges of the last letter, she hesitated, feeling that familiar doubt creep in, mingling with the determination igniting within her. What about the other letters? The ramifications of uncovering others' truths? How do we navigate this? As she grappled with that thought, a chilling familiarity surged. Unearthing truths could very well unleash a tempest, but without grappling with the storm, she would remain shackled to the cycle of silence. Mark's supportive hand on her shoulder steadied her as she fortified her resolve. This journey could potentially realign her family's dynamics, and in turn, lay groundwork for her own evolution.
Just as they began to turn the page of another letter, Sarah felt the abrupt tug of apprehension. How would their discoveries shape not just their understanding, but also the course of her own identity? And what would happen when long-buried truths collided with the world outside their home? She inhaled sharply, knowing the real confrontation of secrets was still to come. Difficult choices and formidable revelations waited impatiently at the horizon, teasing the boundaries of the new chapter they were all stepping into. Would she find the bravery to embrace it, or would the unsteady ground give way? Sarah's heart raced as she held the single letter in her trembling hands. The clenched, yellowing paper felt foreign yet familiar, as if it held the power to change everything. She could sense Mark's presence beside her. His palpable support was like a tether, keeping her anchored amid the storm brewing inside. What if this changes everything? What if I can't handle what's inside? She thought, glancing at her mother, whose gaze betrayed the same fears. Their shared vulnerability felt suffocating, yet exhilarating, each of them standing on the edge of revelation. "They're just words, right?" Sarah said, attempting to dispel the weight of anticipation thickening in the air. But even as she spoke, doubts crept in. These letters contained truths shrouded in silence, concealed in fear, and she felt the tension snap like a taut string, waiting to release its potential energy. "Do you want me to read it?" Mark prompted gently, his voice a soothing balm against her anxiety. "No, this is something I have to do," she asserted, her voice gaining composure. As she unfolded the letter, a flood of memories intertwined with the ink. The aroma of her childhood home, laughter, but also shadows lurking beneath the surface. It felt daunting to face them all. Maybe you will discover more about yourself through this, Mark offered quietly, attuned to her internal struggle. With a deep breath, she began reading aloud. The letter spoke of distant dreams her mother had dared not share, half-formed hopes and fears that danced like ghosts. A vivid recollection emerged of her mother huddled in her bedroom, sketching futures that never bloomed. The words ignited a connection. Her mother had been imprisoned by her own composed facade. "Mom, why didn't you follow these dreams?" The question slipped between Sarah's lips before she could retrieve it, raw and disarming. "I didn't think I could. I thought I had to choose between them and you," her mother replied, a tremor in her voice betraying the armor she wore. It was a moment of radical honesty, but it also left Sarah reeling. The burden of responsibility had been placed on her mother's shoulders, suffocating her aspirations and making their silence seem justified. What would happen if you had chosen differently? Sarah's mind raced, the possibilities suffusing her thoughts with urgency. Who would you be today? As she probed deeper into her mother's past, Sarah unearthed her own fears, those of losing not only the relationship, but also the pathway to her own aspirations. Her mother's sacrifices felt like chains clinking in the dim light, and yet a sense of empathy unfurled within her. "What about your hopes?" Sarah challenged, feeling the swell of courage rising. "Don't you owe it to yourself to reclaim them?" Her mother's eyes glistened with a mix of wonder and sorrow, as if she were seeing the landscape of her life for the first time. "I thought I had lost them forever," she whispered. "Maybe you just needed a nudge." Sarah squeezed her eyes shut momentarily, grappling with her own tether to the past. The desire for her mother's liberation was a commitment to her own. They embarked on another letter together, its contents unveiling even more tangled aspirations of her mother's youth. Each revelation pressed against Sarah's resolve, challenging her to confront the repercussions of these unexpressed dreams. They were no longer a burden. They were a challenge begging for resolution. In that moment, a sudden thought flashed through Sarah's mind. What if this process wasn't merely about them learning to communicate? What if this journey encompassed a chance for her to carve out her own identity, separate and yet intricately linked to her mother's choices? As she shifted the page, she felt the swell of a new resolve. The conversation wasn't merely an excavation of the past, it was a catalyst for the trajectory of their future. Lost in newfound determination, Sarah hesitated while looking at her mother. The weight of secrets seemed to grow heavier with each letter they read. How far back did this spiral of silence extend? Would they find themselves on a path of mutual healing, or would the unveiling of untold stories shatter old wounds wide open? "Mom, if we delve deeper, can we confront everything without falling apart?" she asked, her voice thick with tension as the reality of their choices loomed ominously. Mark's hand tightened on her shoulder, a silent pledge of support, prompting her to take the leap of faith. They might awaken not just each other's truths, but also the truths waiting beneath Sarah's own surface. As she pulled her mother closer, the prospect of unraveling deeper layers chilled her core. What if the truth did more than just reshape their lives? What if it demanded a reckoning that could alter their very essence, an identity they could never reclaim? With every turn of the page, Sarah felt the pulse of impending revelations surge closer, and she understood that she would need to summon all her courage to face the tremors of their discoveries. The moment echoed her name as she finally grasped what was at stake. Her identity, her family, her very future simmered just beneath the surface, beckoning her to plunge deeper. The question pulsing in her mind now: what awaited beyond the letters that held tightly guarded secrets? What lives would they uncover and deconstruct on this journey together? As the silence enveloped them once more, Sarah felt the weight of her decision settle heavily on her chest, her heart thrumming in tandem with a fresh rhythm of determination. She found herself grasping the crumpled letter as if it were a talisman, a key to unlocking both her mother's hidden aspirations and her own latent dreams. There was no turning back now. They would navigate the labyrinth of memories together, one word at a time. "Mom, let's go deeper," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. The backing of Mark's presence loomed nearby, urging her onward. The air around them felt thick with the tension of unsaid things, yet the promise of discovery shimmered just beyond the horizon of her anxiety. With the next letter, the narrative unfolded like a delicate origami, revealing her mother's life in pieces, a childhood full of curiosity stifled by societal expectations, dreams of a career that were snuffed out by the responsibilities of motherhood. As Sarah read each line, a myriad of emotions surged through her, an acute sense of loss, anger tinged with pity, and a burgeoning sense of empowerment. "I can't believe you felt this way," she remarked, her voice cracking under the strain of reality. "You never told me." "I thought I was protecting you from my burdens," her mother replied quietly, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't want you to feel like you had to carry my dreams instead of your own." The irony struck Sarah's mind like a jarring chord. How long had she been weighed down by responsibilities that should never have been hers to shoulder? Yet, even in her mother's silence, she had heard echoes of longing, hints of aspirations trapped within. It was time to give voice to the unexpressed, not just for her mother's sake, but for her own burgeoning identity. "Mom, what if we could reclaim those dreams? You for yourself and me for us?" she suggested, grasping at the flickering lights of hope that danced in the corners of her mind. "Let's write our own stories moving forward." Her mother blinked, uncertainty mingling with incredulity. "You really think it's possible? We've already unearthed so much together. Let's build on this. The past has shaped us, but it doesn't have to define our futures," Sarah declared, a wave of conviction carrying her words beyond doubt. Mark's hand, still resting on her shoulder, tightened a fraction more, igniting a spark of shared purpose. This was more than just uncovering the pain of yesteryears. This was an opportunity for redemption, an invitation to craft a new legacy that intertwined their lives, rather than perpetuating cycles of regret. As they transitioned to the next letter, a rich tapestry of aspirations enveloped them, her mother's youthful dreams spilling onto the page, raw and unfiltered. With each line, Sarah felt the gravity of their shared fears shift.
This wasn't solely about healing the rifts of the past, but unlocking a future where neither of them felt beholden to silent expectations. Suddenly, Sarah's mind echoed with another pressing question. Who was she now? The clutches of her mother's unfulfilled dreams began to uncoil, setting her own ambitions free, like an eagle emerging from a long confinement. "Mom," she said softly, "what are your dreams right now? What do you want to pursue?" The question hung in the air, charged with possibilities. Her mother opened her mouth, then paused, searching for something buried deep within. "I've thought about teaching art," she finally admitted, a tentative spark lighting up her eyes, "but I don't know if I can start again." "You can," Sarah assured her, conviction bubbling in her core, "and I will be right there by your side. You deserve this, like I deserve to find my path." The words not only kindled a flicker in her mother's expression, but also ignited a fire within Sarah herself. This was the catalyst, the profound realization that by peering into the depths of each other's needs, they could reshape their own narratives. But just as exhilaration sparked, a sudden fear eddied in Sarah's chest. What would it mean if they unveiled darker secrets that might tear through their fragile peace? The urgency morphed into an unyielding tension as the next letter awaited them. The stories yet to unfold whispered a promise of transformation. Sarah hesitated, aware that the revelations they had tapped into could also reveal fractures in their bond. What truths lay hidden in the next letters? Would they discover the foundations of their future dreams, or unearth new shadows that would threaten to consume them both? The edges of Sarah's vision blurred as she clutched the letter, her heart pounding.
this was where it would all come to a head. The knowledge they had textured across buried memories lay waiting, a springboard for everything ahead. The weight of unspoken truths threatened to consume her, yet she felt the fierce resolve to meet the storm rather than flee. With the encouragement of Mark at her side and her mother's tentative gaze searching for connection, she unfolded the next letter. Its contents echoed like a ghost from the past, revealing her mother's internal battles, the heart-wrenching choice between familial loyalty and personal dreams. These letters were whispers of the lives they could have lived, links to shattered hopes that deserved acknowledgement, not obfuscation. "Mom, you have to unearth these truths," Sarah urged, rapt by the discoveries woven through their shared history. "We can't break away from the cycle of silence if we don't embrace every inch of your story." With each passage, Sarah felt herself living through the words, a barrage of confrontations woven through familial entanglements and obligations. They expanded her understanding of herself, of her mother, and even of the tangled legacies drawn from her father's misfortunes.
But alongside this insight arose questions she feared to confront. Would she end up like her parents, entangled in the shadows of their past? Or could she forge her own light through the darkness? As they turned the pages together, the rawness of emotions surged, shifting from grief to determination. Each letter opened like a window, unveiling her mother's once hidden aspirations. Those aspirations now called for reclamation, counterpart to her own. "Your dreams don't have to live through mine," Sarah affirmed, locking eyes with her mother, who seemed to flicker while facing the ghosts of her own choices. "You can create. We can create." Her mother's face softened, years of unvoiced burdens crumbling. "And you can freely chase yours," she whispered, the kernel of doubt beginning to split. Yet Sarah sensed the shadows whispering. The tension surrounding their collective journey could reveal volatile truths yet. What repercussions awaited them should they delve deeper? No longer just a family navigating through pain, but a unit embodying the courage to reconstruct self-identity amidst discomfort. "Let's read on," Sarah urged, diving headlong into the next piece. Their collective narrative felt like fragile glass, yet the beauty of it lay not in fragility, but in its invitation toward growth. The more they uncovered, the stronger they became. The room buzzed with revelations, years of inconsistencies emerging into the light. When Sarah read her mother's words expressing disillusionment over forsaken dreams, the emotional toll reached her core. This pain, this beauty, this need for authenticity, it connects us in ways I've never understood, she voiced, feeling the gears of transformation engage more fervently. At last, the final letter lay exposed. Each word metaphorically unlatched not only her mother's story, but was a doorway for Sarah, a revelation of how to confront their histories with integrity. "Can you promise me, no matter how challenging this becomes, we confront it together?" she demanded earnestly. Her mother nodded affirmatively, determination flooding her expression, a flicker of the woman she'd always been, now reborn through candid honesty. "Together," she affirmed, the weight of untruths beginning to slip from their shoulders. As they began to envision a future woven with transparency and growth, both Sarah and her mother embarked on parallel journeys of healing. And just like that, a new era blossomed, a unified path forged by choices, forged by weathered truths, every layer they unearthed yielding strength, every whisper of discomfort a reminder of resilience. In confronting the echoes of betrayal, they were ready to step forth into new legacies, not ones dictated by fear, disappointment, or silence, but empowered narratives crafted by honesty and bravery. With a renewed sense of identity, the very air felt lighter.
The knowledge solidified within them, marking the end of an era defined by shadows, and the dawn of unprecedented possibilities ignited anew. They were not just unearthing stories, they were reclaiming the power embedded within their essence. Stepping away from that threshold, an overwhelming wave of satisfaction flowed through Sarah. She knew the importance of their experience. the kindness born from the painful journey of understanding that would propel them into the future. "Let's do this. Let's face whatever comes next together," Sarah declared, feeling the infusion of solid confidence manifest from within. Their newfound strength became tangible. As they moved forward, the legacy of one father's shadows cast into light would no longer bind them. Instead, they would conquer every barrier with courage and companionship. In that moment, Sarah understood what it meant to break the cycle, not solely for her mother, but for herself and her children. And so, with hearts resonating at a new frequency, they stepped together into the world, each poised to embrace the journey ahead, ready to shape their own destiny, free from the weight of silence. Now take a moment to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. This is the moment to show your support with a like. Every click feeds the algorithm and spreads these powerful narratives. Don't wait even one more second. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's empower each other to reclaim our stories and transform lives together.